So you know how in that last video I talked about how I wasn't posting often? The other reason is I was in hospital. Very bad sign to have heart failure. This is where the story actually begins. Literally gasping for air. Wait, what? I woke up, I was gasping for air and I couldn't breathe. So I sat up on the edge of my bed. This was at 11:30 at night and I didn't know what to do. So I have asthma, so I thought it was just an asthma attack, and I've never had one before. So I took my inhaler, which is Ventolin. It kind of calmed down a little bit, I could breathe a bit easier. I tried going back to bed. I woke up a few hours later again with the same episode. I just got up out of bed, clutching my chest, and I couldn't breathe. I just felt my heart race, beating out of my chest. All these symptoms are not a good sign, I'll tell you that. So at that same time, in uni we were doing cardio. We were reading up and being prompted to ask patients whether they were waking up in the middle of the night gasping for air, which is exactly what I was doing. And if I'm not mistaken, if I remember my cardio, that's a sign of heart failure. So here I was waking up in the middle of the night at 12 and 3 a.m. in the morning thinking that I might have heart failure. Now, I don't know what to do, so I texted a bunch of my mates saying that I was experiencing these symptoms. Everyone was super supportive, and so I didn't go to uni the next day, and I kind of just was lazy and just staying in bed and all of that. It got to about 4 p.m. the next day and I just didn't have any energy to move or even say a sentence, so I was taking 2 or 3 breaths for every word I was speaking. So all of this was kind of crazy to think. And so what I did was I called up my GP and I was like, hey, I'm experiencing these kinds of symptoms. I'm not too worried because I think it's just my asthma, and I had a cold a few days before as well. So I just thought all of that was kind of combined. And he was like, well, like, how are you feeling? And we had a bit of a chat and he was like, yeah, that's okay. And then over the next couple of hours, I got worse. So I lost appetite, I didn't want to move, I didn't want to speak, I was breathing heavily, my heart, I just felt like it was like beating out of my chest, and I couldn't do anything. So I was like, I called him up again, I'm like, hey, I don't think it's getting better, what do you think I should do? And he was like, well, I think it could be pneumonia, you need to the emergency department or an A&E. And so I messaged the group chat and they were like, yeah, I think we think that you should go. And so this was time frame would be around 7 p.m. I think, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go. And the people that I was staying with rushed me to the ED, and this is where the story actually begins, right? So for context, I've never experienced the Australian healthcare system because I've never been in ED here. And I've been in ED back in Auckland a few times for other reasons, but it was just a big eye-opening experience. So let's actually get into the crux of what happened. So I stumbled into the ED. So I was walking at maybe like 50 centimeters a second, so it was super slow, and I stumbled into the ED, clutching my chest, and I barely got out a sentence and said to the nurse that was up there, I was like, hey, I can't breathe, my heart's racing and I have this heaviness in my chest. He was like, did you check for COVID? I'm like, no, but it wasn't COVID. I have I've had COVID before a couple of times and all the symptoms were different. So I said, no, it wasn't. So I didn't test, but I know it's not COVID. And then she was like, okay, well, have you been to the ED before? I was like, no. And then she was like, okay, so what are your symptoms? And so she made me say all my symptoms again. Remember that I can barely speak a word at a time, right? And I was telling her my symptoms again, and then she was like, okay, what's your name? I got to put you into the whole thing. I was like, name, age, date of birth, emergency contact details, all of that admin stuff. I was just standing there literally gasping for air, clutching my chest, and she proceeds to take my vitals, so my oxygen saturation, my temperature. I didn't have any fever, my oxygen sats were fine. She was just like, oh, it's probably just a cold, just have a seat and someone will be down with you. So this interaction took about 10 minutes because I couldn't breathe. And then she was like, okay, actually, don't sit down, go to the admin lady who's just on the side. So I walked over to the admin side of the ED, which was about 15-20 steps. I walked over there and I stood over. I was out of breath, right? So I couldn't, I needed time to gather my breath and say a few words. So I just stood there trying to catch my breath. And I just saw the lady there with her phone scrolling through our handbags on this online shop. And I just thought to myself, you're in an ED that's busy. You're just sitting down where patients who's standing in front of you can see your phone and see what you're doing. And say that you were, I don't know, calculating some dosage for a patient or something, that's understandable. But you're looking through something that you should be looking through in your break time, not when patients are waiting for services that, you know, you're getting paid to do. So I was quite upset. I didn't have the energy to process that then, so I was just like, okay, it is what it is. And so I knocked on the glass pane that they had in front of them, and I was like, hey, I was sent by the other nurse to come here. And then she took my details all over again. So with both of those nurses, I didn't receive any empathy, any compassion, any sense of caring for my well-being. All these things which I've been taught that it is super, super important. I actually didn't see that in practice. Now, there's a whole ton of reasons as to why that could be the case. But going through the system as a patient, it kind of really changed my perspective into how I can develop as a clinician to avoid those kinds of mistakes, so learning from others. Anyway, I sat down, I waited for about an hour or 2 hours, I can't remember, but I went in, called by the nurse inside, and they took me in. They took my vitals. Again, she was like, yeah, it's probably COVID. I was like, no, it's not COVID. And then as soon as I went in, I started getting chest pain, just here. I told them exactly where it is in medical terms, and they're like, are you a medical student? I'm like, yes. So throughout this whole time, no one knew I was a medical student. And so when I told them exactly where I was having pain, they're like, okay, well, that's cool. So we'll do an ECG on you. So they did the ECG on me. They took more history from me as well. And the ECG was fine. I was sinus tachycardia though, which means that the heart rate was normal and regular, but it was just beating really fast. I think it was around 126 beats per minute, which is more than double my heart rate. So my heart rate's usually in the 50s. The symptoms I was experiencing wasn't anxiety or anything like that, because I've never had that before. They took my stuff, and again I was pushed into the ED waiting room again after they took all of those measurements. And I waited for another half an hour to 45 minutes for the doctors to call me in. They transferred me to the clinical decision unit, and then I sat on the bed, changed into hospital gowns, and they were like, we're going to do an ECG. I'm like, hold on, why are you taking the ECG again? I'm not having chest pain anymore. And they're like, did they take the ECG back there? I'm like, wait, what? Like, was there not like a proper handover of events that happened? And they're like, oh, if they did it already, like, you don't need to worry about it. We won't take it again. I'm like, I just sat there and I was just like seriously? Like, I thought like handovers were like a bread and butter kind of thing of medicine, and I was just like, there was no, you can see how there was no communication between the two different teams, which I was quite taken aback by, and you can clearly see how that would affect patients' care. So I was like, okay, look, they took all my stats, everything was normal, I was tachycardic as far as I know, and you don't need to take the ECG again. And they're like, okay, well, if they didn't, we're not going to take it. So I sat there and I waited for the doctor, and so the doctor comes, assesses me, and by this time they haven't given me anything, by the way, so I was still like hyperventilating and all of that. So the doctor comes in, she was like, okay, you have a history of asthma, and you said that you had a bit of a sniffle a few days ago, so I think that it could be a cold that's exacerbated your asthma. But to just rule out pneumonia or anything, as your GP suggested, we'll do a chest x-ray on you and make sure that your heart is okay as well. So I went in for a chest x-ray. It was completely normal. The heart was fine, the lungs were fine, there was no fluid or anything. The official diagnosis was that it was a cold that exacerbated my asthma. So what they started me on was, they changed my inhaler first of all. I was like, I'm not going to take that, it's making my heart race. And they changed my Ventolin to Atrovent, and that stopped my heart from racing all of a sudden, not instantly obviously. But it gave me a really dry mouth, which I was unhappy with. But since my heart wasn't beating as fast, I was fine. So they changed the inhaler, and they gave me prednisone, 50 milligrams, and I took that in cycles, and I took the Atrovent in cycles as well. Over a period of a few weeks, I got better. But there's also one more thing. So I had because I stayed overnight, they didn't want me to deteriorate. And so the doctor that was on night duty, she had to hand over to another doctor in the morning, and he came in the morning around 11:30, 12, and he was like, yeah, I know that you're a med student, I'm just going to give you all the sort of the printouts and all of that for you to study later, because we were doing cardio. So he gave me all of those, and he was like, I'll write you a few prescriptions for prednisone to take over a couple of days, and you can take the inhalers home as well. And so I got to the pharmacy to collect my prescription, and it turns out that they screwed up my numbering on the prescription. So he was meant to give me prescriptions for 3 days for the tablets. He did it in such a way so that it didn't really make sense to the pharmacist who was meant to be handling the drugs. So the way that he did it, they weren't allowed to give me those drugs. So I didn't get what was wrong, but there was also a bit of either a miscommunication or some sort of human error that happened over there as well. So all in all, my experience of the healthcare system so far, from the patient's perspective, has been all over the place. Right from when I got to the ED, even to when I was collecting my prescriptions. So, and I had to deal with the symptoms afterwards. So all of this was going on in the background, and that's why I was kind of AFK. I will see you guys in the next one.